has over 50 years of experience working in the construction, engineering, and architectural industry. And he is also a past chairman of the U.S. Green Building Association Detroit Regional Chapter. So he is part of the Wayne State University, and he's been going through architectural school in University of Detroit Mercy. And it is an honor to have Patrick as part of our panel, as he is a fellow of the Engineering Society of Detroit, and he brings a lot of experience and knowledge surrounding the Go Green building, as he worked for Ford Motor Company Go Green program. So Patrick, without further ado, please go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you. Well, I recently wrote an article for the USGBC, and it talked about why I'm involved in green buildings, why I was involved in that, how I got involved. And I'd like to kind of take you along that journey as part of my presentation, and also give you the benefits of green buildings. So that's where we're going with this. This is something that we've seen here. My history on efficient buildings dates back to the 60s. So through the 60s to the 90s, our main drivers were cost. That means basically efficiency, energy reduction, and environmental. We were interested in clean air and water. At that time, we knew nothing about greenhouse gases or CO2. So we're working forward. The building you see in the background is a complex that I did in San Lando, Florida, which is just outside of Orlando. It was a 7, a 5, and a 1-story building. Incorporated a lot of green things, even though it was done in 1980. For instance, we had a highly efficient water source heat pump, which let us have individual control for individual offices. We also were able to move energy from one side of the building to the other in the situation where one side might need heat and the other side needs cooling. You can do that without creating it on one side and disposing of the heat on the other. Big generator there. Another really significant thing on there was the landscaping that went in, the big green areas, and the stormwater system, which took all of the water there, ran it into a detention pond, which all of the water was then percolated into the ground and recharged the groundwater. So we're happy to see how that went. Continuing with some other buildings at that time, I mean, what did we do? We looked for better insulation, we looked for equipment efficiency, heat recovery in a lot of cases. We tried to minimize infiltration. Once in a while, we'd be dealing with passive solar. We tried to incorporate that, and occasionally maybe even a solar hot water heater. And of course, we were looking for water conservation. The building you see in the background here is the Bosch facility in Farmington Hills, Michigan. It was an office and a test facility. And the pond you see out front was especially interesting. Not only was it decorative, but it also served as the stormwater detention facility, and there was a fountain in the middle of it. But we took that water and we used it to cool the test equipment and the HVAC system of the building. Then, of course, we used that water to irrigate the landscaping around. So we made multiple use out of that. So then in 2001, something happened. Ford was involved in green design. The Ford Rouge plant that you see in the background had many, many green aspects of it. One of which everybody knows is the Ford Rouge plant had the world's largest green roof. So that was quite a thing. So Ford got together and they suggested with all of their architects that they attend something called a USGBC Summit Conference in Tucson, Arizona. This was the precursor to Greenbelt. And we went there. What happened? This shows what Greenbelt looks like today. But at the time, we had about 350 people there. We learned about green buildings. We learned about USGBC. We were kind of amazed at some of the things we do. And we were surprised that as many as 350 to 400 people attended the event. Now, if you know what Greenbelt is today, you see how that has grown since then. We came back and we decided to establish a chapter in Detroit to encourage green building design and establish green education. So that's what we were going with that. Now, I took that information based on the other things I've been doing with energy and efficiency in buildings. This was really a giant step forward in my activities moving forward. Why? Because buildings have a very significant environmental impact. They use 65% of the electricity, 36% of the total energy use, and 30% of the greenhouse gas emissions come from buildings. 30% of the waste output comes, 12% of the water use, and 30% of the raw materials. You know, this is all in buildings. And what you see in the background is the Renaissance Center that I had some minor involvement with when it was being built. And then, of course, the river walk along the way, which I had designed some of the roadway around that area. So green design is significant positive impact, you know, of the design and construction practices that significantly reduce the negative impact of buildings on the environment and the occupants. Now, the building you see in the background is one that not only designed, but I occupied. That was a house of mine. And it was done really before LEED got into a full-blown effect. This was done in about 2000, but I incorporated many of the green movements in there anyway. The house was highly energy efficient with an energy efficient shell, constructed of renewable materials, and it had a design facing west because that's where a water and a canal and boats were. So I wanted to get a lot of glass there, but we know that west is a big energy that you'll get from sun coming in. So I positioned the building to take advantage of some trees close by, and the trees shaded it in the summer, but they allowed light to come in the winter. The site design had extensive landscaping and a fish pond, and we retained water on site and used it to recharge the groundwater. In addition to that, we used canal water for any irrigation and supplying water to the fish pond. So we're incorporating all of that in there, even though that was not necessarily, I was not necessarily involved in LEED at the time. Now, the principles of sustainable construction, the goal is to create and operate a healthy built environment based on resources, efficiency, and ecological design. Principles, many of these are what you heard Lana talk about: reduce resource consumption, reuse resources, use recyclable materials if you can, eliminate toxics, apply life cycle costing, not just the first cost, and focus on quality because it lasts longer. And of course, we're protecting nature. The building you see in the background here is an engine plant that I was responsible for that was done for Chrysler at the time, and was in Trenton, Michigan, about 900,000 square feet of building that included many green items, including efficient heating and cooling and lighting. Natural light was brought into not only the offices, but the plant, you know. High efficiency building shell, and there was some area there that was that needed to be restored because there was some contamination on the existing site, which was adjacent to another plant. This building got LEED Gold certification and was one of the first industrial buildings in the country to do so. When it opened, we had the governor of the state of Michigan and the chief executive of Wayne County as part of the opening ceremonies of that. Now, green buildings are buildings that are efficient, environmentally sensitive, and cost effective. They're highly conscious of land use and site development, efficient water, wastewater, efficient energy systems, conservation, and effective use of materials, and creating a healthy place for occupants to live and work. Same building there, Chrysler in the background. So this is where USGBC came in mind. We encourage green buildings, encourage green products. We provide education and collaboration. And of course, the rating system that Lana described helps us get there and define what is a green building. Focused on site planning, stormwater, water, wastewater, energy efficiency, conservation of materials, and indoor air quality. We're using that moving forward to do buildings. So the benefits are obvious here. When you look at that with green buildings, you got energy reduction, waste reduction, water use reduction, reduced operating costs. There's a bottom line that helps you get costs down. Certainly CO2 reduction. We're all interested in reducing greenhouse gases and improving indoor air quality. That gives us a better living environment. Building you see here, or the project here in the background, is one of the Go Green projects for Ford Motor Company, which I was the manager of. And this happens to be an outdoor parking lot and lighting, which was upgraded to LED, saving a lot of energy. Matter of fact, I had one of my dealerships came to me and told me that the energy company came to them and they were rechecking their meters after they had redid their lighting because they thought there was something wrong with them because the energy was reduced by so much. It's a great opportunity. So the benefits of green buildings, we have environmental, that's to reduce the impact of natural resources, certainly reducing pollution. Economic, you reduce cost. And here you're reducing certainly operating costs, and sometimes you can even reduce first costs. As Lana indicated, doesn't always have to cost you more. But definitely the idea is improving the bottom line. And the social benefits, enhancing the occupant comfort and the health, and maintaining minimizing the strain on local infrastructures. So we're typically improving the quality of life. This is what we call the triple bottom line. You're working on all three of them. Now, green building benefits, you know, people spend 90% of their time in buildings. HVAC is 43% of US energy. Buildings account for 12% of waste generation. Now, LEED projects have been diverting, 80 million tons a year from landfills, or even more today as more buildings go in that direction. And green buildings do have a greater building value to their owners because they're worth more. People see that, and they're more efficient. As I see it, a majority of buildings going forward are likely to be green buildings, and I think they need to be. The building you see in the background here is a project 8-story high office building that I did in Tampa, Florida. This one was done before LEED came into effect, had a number of interesting items, efficient systems, the same water-based heat pump system that I mentioned earlier in the other project, but had one very interesting thing. It was a tight site. We didn't have room for a detention pond. We created a very, very unusual subsurface detention pond built out of rock and filter fabric, which was underneath the parking lots. It's a very unique design. So where are we going? Better buildings, we think that's our legacy. That's what we're trying to do. Better buildings, more efficient buildings. That's where we want to go to. And protecting the environment is also our legacy. We also want to see sunsets like this for ourselves, for our children, for our grandchildren. We're protecting it for future generations. And here's a piece of my future generations here with my wife, my daughter, and 3 grandsons. So we want the world to be good for them moving forward. We used to say, do this because it's the right thing to do. That's still true, absolutely. But I've come to feel that right now, it's really the only thing to do. So it's the right thing to do, and it's the only thing to do. We need to do this going forward. Green buildings are the way to go. And with that,
excellent.
I say thank you for all of your effort here, and thank you for listening.
Appreciate it.